So something I've been wrestling with lately in terms of my views towards people I disagree with is how much do people have control over their own beliefs, over who they vote for? Or are they just a product of their environment? Are they a product of the society they grow up in? Should you really hold people personally accountable for the way they vote? And obviously, on the surface level, you've heard me ask that question. You're like, of course you should. I see people voting for Brexit, I see people voting for Trump. Of course you should hold them accountable. They have their own free will, they can go, research, they can make their own decisions. They're old enough, they're adults. Of course, they are totally accountable for who they support right now and who they vote for and everything they believe. But then I'm thinking, is that really true? I'm thinking about my own upbringing, and these last couple of videos I made are quite personal, I guess. So personally, I have, what you'd call a traditional family. My parents are still together. I have 2 brothers. I have a sister. My dad went to university, and most people didn't back in the day when he went. He got a good job, and he's, worked his way up to have a really good job, providing me with the environment to have, I guess, a nice life. I went to 2 good schools, and I had help at home if I wanted it in terms of my education. If I ever needed help, my dad and my mum would help me. And then I did well in school. I got to go to 2 good universities, and then that influences my whole political beliefs. And even though I was raised in a Catholic family, went to Catholic school, was an altar server at church, the religion was never forced on me in the sense that I was forced to believe in it, even though I was obviously forced to go as a kid, because as a kid obviously don't have your own choices and stuff. But I was never forced to believe in it, and then I told them I didn't believe in it. Not a big deal. Nothing really happens. I stopped going to church when I was 15 and never really went back. And luckily for me, I had parents who didn't push their own views on me. I was always allowed to have my own opinions. And that is a great starting point for someone like me to really be able to have this free thought and free will and realise what's wrong in the world and realise, who I should vote for. But that is just me, and I'm sure, a lot of you who are watching this, you're like, that's quite similar to me. No one's ever forced their religion on me, forced their political views on me. I grew up in a nice area. I went to a nice school. As such, I never had to worry about a lot of things. But then you get to a lot of people. So for example, the stereotypical Trump supporter, I guess, is someone who's poor, who's working class, grows up in a rural white area. So if you're someone like that, you grow up in that area, and every politician in living memory who's represented your state has been from the Republican Party. Everyone you know votes Republican, everyone you know is white, everyone you know is Christian, pretty much very similar to you. You never really have to think about anything else, it's just the way life is. Does anyone like that really have a chance at voting for someone different and believe in other things? Of course they do. There are obviously people who grow up in those environments who do vote against what these other people do, but then you can start to see why so many people in those bubbles never break out. There's also a lot of peer pressure. If everyone else does it and everyone else has always done it this way, why would you change your mind? And of course that goes without saying that in a country like America, where the rich dominate everything, there is a reason these people are like that, whether it's the rich trying to keep you ill-informed and uneducated by dictating what you learn in school and setting an education program that makes you learn American history and world history in a certain way, which will benefit them ultimately by conditioning you to vote a certain way. Obviously the elites in most countries want to keep in power, so they're not going to teach you radical things, they're not going to challenge you. They like to keep you in a little box because they can manage you better. And that is also something you find in religion a lot of the time as well. But when you have something like that in a little thing I've outlined, do these people really have any chance? Do they really have any choice? A lot of them. How far does free will go when your head is just stuffed with propaganda from a super young age, and then you have Fox News on all the time, or you have conservative talk shows on? Your whole world is just dictated by the rich's propaganda. And you might have that from the minute you're born. You're just born into this family, you're born into this community, everyone is like this, everyone watches this, everyone votes the same way, and that is just how it is. And pretty much you're going to stay in that area, you're going to work the same jobs probably as everyone else, you're going to work the same jobs as your parents maybe, and then you have kids, the cycle is going to continue. And that's what I think when I'm thinking about, do people have free will? Should I be angry at these Trump voters? Or should I feel sorry for them? Should I be angry at people who voted for Brexit, or should I feel sorry for them, especially the ones who are going to be hit hardest by it, because they've been conned into voting against their own interests? And in the UK you have a similar bubble. You have lots of areas in the country, very white, very English, very Christian, read The Sun, read the Mail. They hate left-wing people, and they have a certain worldview, and they have a certain view of the way politics works and who they should vote for. And again, especially if you're poor as well, and you're born in this community, how do you get out of it? You can't access the education that would help you change your mind. You can't access the jobs that might expose you to other cultures and other peoples and just really expand your mind. And especially people from cities and multicultural cities and fairly liberal cities, so New York and London, for example, it's easy to feel a bit superior and think, aren't we so much better? We're so enlightened, we're so tolerant of diversity, we're so smart because we realise what the world is like. We vote for the people who do actually say they will represent us, and we can kind of tell if they're legit or if they're full of shit. But we're born in this environment. We're born in these tolerant cities, and we're born in these diverse cities. So our whole view of the world is so different, and that affects how we vote and affects what we believe. But we don't grow up in other countries that are fairly homogenous and are under tight control by maybe an authoritarian government. We don't grow up in parts of the country that are very homogenous and there's peer pressure and everyone just does the same thing, and the education is bad, the jobs are bad, there's just not a lot of room for escape. These are the type of people I feel bad for and kind of think like, you never really had a chance, you never really had a choice, you've been conditioned from day one. But what people forget, especially in terms of Trump, loads of middle class white people voted for Trump, and a lot of middle class white people voted for Brexit as well. I have no sympathy for these people. They totally have free will. They're just insanely prejudiced or bigoted. And a lot of these people are exposed to the world. They are exposed to jobs in cities. They do go to university. They do mix with people outside their traditional social circles. They are exposed to a lot of these things, but then they still choose. They make the choice to sell out, I guess. A lot of them are like, I'm socially liberal, but I'm financially conservative. So I'm going to vote for conservative people who are generally conservative in everything because I'm selfish and I'm greedy, and that's my choice. I'm not really thinking about anything else rather than my own, I guess, well-being. And they don't realise, of course, you cannot be socially liberal and financially conservative, because being financially conservative means you can't be socially liberal. If you're financially conservative, that means you don't support, in this country, the NHS, really. It means you don't support, I guess, social programmes to help people who have worse backgrounds. So how can you be socially liberal? Because maybe you don't have a problem with other races, or you don't have a problem with the LGBT community. And those people I don't have any sympathy for. And of course the rich people who do this. People who completely sell out, people who work for Fox News, people who work for The Sun, who work for the Mail, who do all these things, and they've making a choice. They know what they're working for hurts people, but they still do it anyway. And then you do have free will, you do have personal accountability. And I think there are also extreme examples. I'm talking about voting here, but for example, supporting Trump right now, and you can make some comparisons to supporting someone like Adolf Hitler. These people, even though a lot of them are desperate, there must come a point when you see something so awful, like what Trump's doing with the camps on the border, like what he's doing in terms of just general discrimination against people. There must be a point, especially when so-called Christians support him as well, but you must be like, no matter what my upbringing, I just find this disgusting. Isn't there like a level? You think there would be. But again, this is where I wrestle with this stuff, because I'm like, I'm saying this now, but am I being hypocritical to my own argument? Am I being hypocritical to saying a lot of these people don't have a choice? If we take this to this logical conclusion, am I then saying that most people in Germany didn't have a choice but to vote for Hitler and support the Nazis? Of course I'm not saying that, but is that where my argument would lead to if I have to stay true to it? And this particularly comes from watching things like Westworld and listening to the creators talk about free will and what is the difference between a robot on a loop, or like a video game character on a loop, and a human, because we all have our own loops, regimes. We all have our own ways we can't break out of, our own ways of thinking. We can't break out of our own social circles. Are we any better than robots a lot of the time? Instead of having a creator who inputs code in our head, is society just, coding us? Is it just moulding us in a certain way, depending on where we're from? And that's the stuff I keep going back and forth on. Because obviously, like I'm saying, I don't want to say, and I don't believe a lot of these people in terms of Nazis, that they didn't have free will in supporting someone who is obviously so much worse. And I say this because there were a lot of anti-fascist protesters in Nazi Germany. Even during the war there were some. There's something called the White Rose movement. It's a student movement set up by a guy and his sister, and they were executed by the Nazis for spreading leaflets that were anti-Nazi. So there are people, and they make a choice, and people go along with it, and people are complicit. But at the same time, when I see things like Brexit, I see things like Trump, I see people voting against their own interests all the time. And then I'm like, how can they keep doing this? Do they really have free will? Because they don't have the faculties, I guess, to understand what they're voting for because of the propaganda they've been filled, because of the education they've been given, because of the lack of opportunity. And then you think about something like World War I, for example, where just millions and millions of young men were just sent to their deaths to fight for imperialism. And there was barely any resistance to it. Some religious groups, like the Quakers, didn't go and fight. Some pacifists didn't go and fight. But generally, they just all went over there collectively. They kept going over there. No one stood up against this war, really. No significant amount of the population did. Because they were all a product of their environment. They were all brainwashed by British imperialism, by the King and Queen, by religion. And are they any better than robots? Maybe World War I in England was the straw that broke the camel's back, because of course when you got back, you got a lot of people really challenging the system, and of course you got your first Labour government in the post-war years. But at the same time, you're just thinking, how can a whole society go along with this at this time? So I guess I'm running round in circles of this argument, but the point of this video is to really start the discussion and really get your guys' opinion. What do you think of what I'm saying? What do you think in terms of free will and the free choice of who you vote for? Do a lot of people really have a choice? Do a lot of people really have any chance to vote for someone who will represent their interests? Let me know in the comments, and let me know if you have experience of this. I know, a lot of you subscribe to me and talk to me on chat. You come from places like what I've mentioned, and you're not like that. I would be interested to hear how you kind of broke away from that. But of course, there's just so many groups like that who will continually vote against their own interests, whether that is Trump, whether that is some of the poorest white people in the country, voting for someone who's never cared about poor people, who's never cared about the working class, who's never going to help you. How does someone vote for them? And of course, racism is one factor, but you can't make the argument that nearly every single person who voted for Trump is deeply, Nazi-style racist, can you? And I would say the same thing about Brexit as well. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you like the video, please leave a like, maybe subscribe. If you want to find me on social media, follow me at The Cavernacle on both Twitter and Instagram. Check out the links in my description. I have my Patreon. And thanks to my patrons, I really appreciate it. I also have my WordPress blog with a lot of things I've written. Go check that out. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.